Next presenter, Mohawk Green, who's going to talk about queer magic, know your power. Since some of the earliest civilizations have known that humankind, parallels between mystical abilities such as shamanism and witchcraft, and gender variance and neurodivergence, for example, have been drawn. However, dominant narratives have erased the significant presence and influence of queer people in these practices, and with higher rates of drug use in queer communities, typically associated with addiction, problematic use, and other stigma, it's important to model a different perception, especially for our community. As the old saying goes, knowledge is power, and when we can claim ours by unlearning what we've been told and becoming intimately familiar with psychedelics and natural drugs, the clinical and ethnobotanical research, and leveraging them for our own benefit as we see fit in our everyday lives, whether it's used recreationally for pleasure or performance enhancement. Not necessarily in the physical sense of giving us enhanced stamina, but in the context of making us feel more attractive and more sociable, which can be productive in building healthy relationships that aid in our personal growth and well-being or for healing. And with that, I welcome Mohawk to the stage.
Hey everybody. Um, some people here already know me, which is a relief, to be honest, because I don't know a lot of you all, and I'm like having a great time getting to know a lot of you. And I come from like a harm reduction context and work with people who use a lot of drugs that a lot of people don't like to talk about or are afraid of and things like that. And those are all the things that I love to do and talk about. So, I, as much as possible, like to bring that into some of these spaces where people are sort of like siloed away from some of the like inconvenient things that we don't like to acknowledge going on in our communities, and that some of us may even be using in like secrecy and things like that. And so that's kind of why, like, when I was, y'all are allowed to laugh at things that I say. I tend to, like, don't feel like I am here to make you laugh and entertain. So when Bia called me to bring me into this conference, I was kind of like, does she know what she's getting into by bringing me on? Like, does she really know my work? Does she really know how I talk to people? Because I'm kind of like, I don't give a fuck about what you think about me, like, kind of like I'm here, I'm queer, I use a bunch of drugs, fucking get used to it. You're gonna fucking respect me too, and you're gonna pay me some money. So, like, I have to deal with that a lot, and I really want to, like, inspire others to like get into their power, even if the things that they do they might feel shame about, or the identities they represent they might feel some shame or anything about. But yeah, when Bia brought me on, I was just like, oh, this is going to be very entertaining. At least for me, I don't know about everybody else, but this is kind of like my kink of like making people uncomfortable with all the information that I'm going to give them. But I hope that you will, all will receive it well. I want you to like really, really listen to me here, because I have some really important things to say, and I'm hoping that's why Bia brought me here, because she recognizes that I have some important shit to fucking say, and I'm going to swear a lot. I don't give a shit about respectability or anything. Like, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. It's not going to be polished. It's not going to necessarily sound academic. I can be academic. I fucking love science and shit. I have my own spectrometer in my kitchen. I be testing drugs and stuff. That's another topic that we're not going to talk about today, really. But I love science. I can give you the academic shit, but I'm also going to swear every other word too. But yeah, I'm grateful to be here, to be meeting with all of you, especially some people that I've only seen virtually. It's great to see you in person finally, and for some people who just follow me online, here I am. But yeah, this is called Queering Psychedelics. And for some of you all who are already intimately familiar with me, you know that I don't necessarily center my work on psychedelics or natural or plant medicines or however people like to refer to them. A lot of my views are very, very radical and sometimes too radical for some of the people that occupy this space and should take up less space. But, what I really, fight for is us having access to all the tools that are available to us, and not necessarily in the sense of like they're being given to us. They're like, things that we can go pick up or grow or whatever. Like, it's just the fact that we have access to the information that this exists. It's out there. We can, obtain it, learn about it, and then try to use it to our advantage. So, especially in this community where we're dealing with a lot. We're dealing with multiple marginalized identities and things like that. And what I've started to see in this space as well is that some people, I'm not assuming that anyone here necessarily believes these things, but some people in this space of psychedelic medicine, plant medicines and things like that have started to adopt the same busted logic. And the mental gymnastics that a lot of the people who are oppressing us use, to appeal to these authorities and try to, get laws passed so we can legally access these medicines and stuff, or have them decriminalized and things like that so that we can access them without the criminal nature of it. But still even adopt, and beyond kind of saying what they need to hear in order to make that happen, actually believing this thing, adding to the stigmas around what they, the powers that be, the same sort of mindsets that they use to make shit up, basically, and justify criminalizing us for these activities that, in a lot of ways, were already part of, any sort of traditions and things that we already have as queer people or, any cultural identities that we share. Sorry, I'm getting work texts. Busy. Stop it, Eddie. Okay, so I also do a little bit of, accountability stuff for people who are in recovery and stuff like that. So I will respond to them later. But I just want to say that these are drugs that can use, all of them. These are drugs that you use. We know these drugs exist, whether in nature or they can synthesize or they can kind of be extracted in some way. And that there's no way, there's no right way per se. There's no limitation to how you can basically leverage the pharmacology to be this works for me. We start to draw these lines in the sand of this is what you should be using or how you should use it. It's got to be this way because that's how these people do it. Oh my God, Eddie, come on. So, and I just kind of want to first get people to kind of just think outside of that box. If that's how you feel about certain things, just try to put that aside for a little bit. And we can also do that without doing things that we call Columbusing, where we discover this thing and then give it a new name or whatever, but it already existed, or or colonizing other people's practices or anything like that. I think we have plenty of resources to be able to create something that's of our own, even if there are some parallels between someone else's use of a substance and how we would like to use it as well. There's nothing stopping us from applying and integrating these things intentionally and strategically into our lives and into our communities in ways that make sense for us, our environments, our level of access, and things like that. And with that, I'd like to take a quick poll. Are there any artists in the room, people that paint or anything? I see a few hands in the back. Yeah, so when you're painting, do you just like all of your colors with blue, yellow, and red? No, of course you don't. You just fucking go to the art supply store and get the colors you need because that's way more convenient, So why would we limit ourselves with the tools that we're using for healing or growth or anything like that. Why would we limit ourselves if we have all sorts of things we can choose from that can get us where we need to go? You know, and that's probably why some of y'all food be tasting bland, because y'all don't be using no damn seasoning on anything. It just, only salt, you know. Like, use it all, like, use it all. I seen some of y'all's cupboards, and you just skip right on over it. Yeah, so there's no reason to limit yourself, even to just like plant or natural medicines, or, you know, things that we recognize as being like, this is here, it's for us, it grows out of the ground, or it, you know, it's endogenous in our bodies, and things like that. You know, like naturally occurring, like, doesn't necessarily inherently mean that it's safe just because it grows out of the ground. Lots of extremely deadly and poisonous things grow out the ground, you know, and we know that about certain things, so we could still apply that sort of like harm reduction to anything, you know, even if it's synthetic or whatever. And when you think about it, even in that more like medicalized context of like pharmaceuticals, upwards of 50% of the pharmaceuticals that we have, that we use day to day, are derived from, you know, natural resources in the first place. Like antihistamines and aspirin and like, you know, other medications that we use. So like, you know, some people have kind of got this like vendetta against the pharmaceutical industry, and I totally understand that, you know, or the medical industry in general. I totally understand that, but sometimes those tools are really helpful. You know, I have ADHD, I have cat allergies, you know, I have lots of things where like, I gotta get those pharmaceutical drugs, because if I wanna pet that adorable cat, psychedelics, cannabis, not really gonna help me in that category. That the cat is so cute and it's rubbing up against my leg. You know, I gotta take that Zyrtec, you know, and and even with my ADHD medication, it's like, well, I have to rely on that to focus. I'm on ADHD medication right now, and I also use nicotine to assist with my ADHD. I chew the gum, which I spit out before I got on stage. So, you know, these are all things that we can combine, we can make it useful in our lives. And like I also, you know, I use androgenic drugs that are synthetic for my gender euphoria. And even like when you consider, you know, these definitions of like what is a chemical, a synthetic chemical, for example, the definition of that is technically it's just something has been done to it to where it wouldn't have been like, this wouldn't have occurred naturally. Something's been done to it to where like this wouldn't be found in this exact state in nature. So that technically means that ayahuasca is a synthetic chemical. It's not just boiling in a hot spring somewhere and we went and drank it, or it's not, you know, it's not like coming out of a volcano or something or growing out the ground like that. It's not even active until they brew it together, you know, the vines and the MAOIs or whatever, to make it orally bioavailable. You know, that's basically just jungle chemistry, and they figure that out. So, you know, as we say, knowledge is power, and that's a lot of what this talk is about. I could go on forever about like science and nerdy things, but I want to get into some, you know, practical applications of this kind of stuff. Like, we are powerful people, maybe not in the context of like having a lot of financial power or, you know, government influence necessarily, but we have power in other ways. And a lot of this power even existed before, you know, in gender and queerness, before colonization tried to erase our existence, and, you know, had important ties in these communities, you know, these third gender or whatever identities that they, you know, considered them in those particular communities. They had those roles. They had really important roles in those societies, and still do, you know, for those that are still in existence in this day. And there's like a whole lot more I would love to talk about that, but there's not enough time. But I think I'll, you know, put some resources online if you want to like, go follow me later or something where you can like look into that more in depth if you're curious. But right now, you know, like in the news, you see it happening. Like, we are under attack. you know, and it's even more important than ever for us to be able to like get in our power and leverage that to protect ourselves, to, you know, not just survive, but to thrive and to have healthy relationships with each other, build community with each other. There's, you know, the strength and power, there's a strength in numbers. And also being an ass kicker helps. Who was here for Kavan's presentation yesterday? Yeah, like we learned some karate, you know. Learned a little karate, you know, Kavan's from New York also. I'm from New York, so, you know, you gotta kind of be an asshole sometimes. Or you're not getting very far if you can't like assert yourself. You're not even getting into the next lane if you don't assert yourself, if you're a driver. So, you know, Kavan and I actually share a lot of similar philosophies, you know, with survival skills and pathways to thriving, especially with like, the reality of like that we live in. It would be great to just be able to like run away from all these problems and things, but you can't. You've got to be able to kind of make your existence meaningful and, you know, positive here where you are and alive. And so like actually, you know, I've been attending a few of the talks over the weekend, and a lot of things people have said already kind of like resonate and even kind of align with what, you know, I'm here to say and just my overall philosophy and how I move through life. So like, you know, to kind of summarize, I really want people to consider exploring more of the tools, you know, and by exploring more of the tools, that could just be gathering information about it. Doesn't mean you have to use everything, but just being aware of these things, really understanding them, you know, that also helps break down the stigma that we tend to have around a lot of substances. I mean, there's probably a lot of people in this room at some point who didn't even want to touch psychedelics or cannabis or whatever drugs that they might find very healing and helpful for them today because of something that they heard, or if you went through the DARE program or some crap like that, you know. I still have my DARE certificate. I don't know how that hasn't burst into flames by now. Like that, I don't even know how that's still intact. That thing is, I didn't learn shit in that program apparently. I said, fuck all of that. Drugs are great. You know, maybe one day if I get back to Burning Man, I'll like throw it in the temple fire or something, like sacrifice it, like fuck you. And you know, with these tools allowing us to be able to build strong relationships and community, you know, we need each other more than ever right now. I'm glad that we have this space to be able to, you know, really center our particular issues and our particular beliefs and our causes and talk about those and really get to those root issues. And then, you know, collaborating so we can really leverage the strengths and relationships we have with each other. Some people are going to be good at one thing and not another thing and whatever, you know, being able to lean on each other, share resources, share knowledge, support each other, you know, in each other's well-being, success, and whatever. Oh, awesome. My medication's available for pickup. I am not even lying. Like, I'm going into airplane mode here. Sorry, this is very distracting. Okay. Like I said, ADHD, yo. So I like try to turn all the notifications off my phone usually. But yeah, I'm gonna just go into a couple of like stories that I have that, you know, kind of highlight some of what I'm talking about in building spaces and community, healthy relationships that help us kind of like thrive and like, you know, basically fight. We have to fight, you know. We're here, we gotta survive. People are trying to wipe us out right now. So I'm sure many of you are aware of the rave scene. Who's aware of the rave scene? Who likes raving? Yes. I was gonna go to a rave last night, but wasn't really in the mood after finding out the secret location was in a pretty seedy area. And I was like, you know, I don't really feel like having a fight if that occurs. I just am not in the mood to fight anybody right now. But we have the rave scene, you know, queers built the rave scene. Queer brown, black people, Detroit, Chicago, New York, created this space, you know? And in those spaces, they often use psychedelics. Sometimes there's no alcohol even available. They just used, you know, these kind of entheogenic type substances and dance all night, all day to some really repetitive but really nice music. Just one of my favorite pastimes as well. You know, and those spaces build community. Even if it doesn't seem like it, even though it just seems like it's this, you know, free-for-all of people like indulging in pleasures and things. I mean, I'm a fucking Taurus and my birthday's in 2 weeks, so like do that. Do that. Be hedonistic. Fucking live life and love it. But, you know, those spaces also have a lot of depth in them. A lot of spaces, especially right now, they have these policies of, it's this acronym, not a fluff, which means no one turned away for lack of funds. So that means you can go and enjoy this environment, build this community, have this experience, grow with these people, you know, even if you don't have anything to your name, which a lot of people may not. I wouldn't have been able to afford to come here if I wasn't speaking, so, you know, I wouldn't even be able to, like, engage in this with you all if I didn't have, you know, sort of this access that was given to me by Bia and the Chacruna folks. That's just a reality for a lot of us queer, trans, brown, black individuals. Like, that's just a reality. Some of us do not have many resources at all. And in these rave scenes, you know, a lot of times we'll do things like fundraising, mutual aid, you know, raising funds with the raves for community members, for causes. You know, even when someone passes away, they'll have these kind of like celebrations of their life in the form of a rave, have a vigil, all these things that kind of continue to bring people together and celebrate people's lives, celebrate people's, you know, just like capacity building to be able to preferably keep us all alive and keep us kind of in this fight to support each other. But, you know, the rave scene is like an example of that. And even Terrence McKenna had drawn parallels to the rave scene, to like Aboga rituals and the BT community of just like having psychedelics and you're dancing and you're just, it's like a social thing. It's not necessarily spiritual. Like it can be, obviously, because that looks different for a lot of people. You can have a spiritual awakening in a rave, for sure. But that's how it looks like in our community, kind of in modern times. It doesn't look like, you know, there's a drum circle and we're out in the jungle and you're doing a thing and drinking the tea and blowing the thing in your face and whatever, like the step-by-step thing that looks exactly like something else, kind of like made it our own thing. And another personal anecdote that I really want to talk about, and also like wrote an article about it if you want to like look it up later, and it's about the use of kava. And kava is a, you know, Southeast Asian kind of like anxiolytic brew that people drink in sort of a nature of like us drinking alcohol and whatnot. And Brooklyn has like a really, really strong kava kind of kratom cafe community. And at the time that I learned about that community, I was actually abstaining from most drug use, including psychedelics and cannabis, because I was kind of off the rails with everything. You know, that it got into a point where it's like, I should just be sober for a while because I'm just in a really bad headspace. I was unemployed at the time, and I'm like in and out of employment a lot. But I wanted to continue like capacity building, working towards, you know, getting employment, working on projects, you know, do a lot of harm reduction stuff. So I was still like working through that, but I needed like a space where I could just kind of like sit around, you know, do my work. And like coffee shops are like really noisy and loud and people are just in and out, and it's just like too much frantic energy for me to like work in. And, you know, oftentimes they like close 5, 6, 7 p.m. or something, and I like work late, if I'm like really into a project. But the kava bars would like open up like, 9 a.m., which is early. Like I get up early, didn't want to be like sitting in my apartment all day staring at those four walls with like the one window that good sunlight comes through in New York City. So I was like, let me get out, it's good for my health. So I'd go sit in the kava bars, drink kava, drink kratom sometimes. I had to cut back on the kratom because I went into withdrawal after realizing that I was drinking it way too much. But the kava community there, they have the saying, it's bula, which means to life. It's like cheersing with the kava, which tastes really disgusting, but then you feel nice a little bit afterwards, But like I got to like know all these people from working in that space basically every day. I would go there every single day. I'd sit, work all day, drink kava throughout the day, talk to the people. There was like, I think, a psychedelic society group that would meet there as well, meet lots of like-minded individuals, and yeah, just like make friends, build community. And then what ended up coming up was that some of the kava workers, some of the kava tenders, as they were called, like the bartenders, they were starting to experience labor rights violations. They weren't being paid properly. They had a very abusive boss, and things were going on. And basically, it was just like, you don't fuck with my friends. You don't fuck with my friends, you don't fuck with my people. We all have really strong relationships here. We care about these people. We want these people to be paid properly or, whatever, need to be doing right by them. And through the relationship that we had built in this space, and like even through partaking in this substance together on a regular basis, we started to, picket and protest and form a union for kava workers. And even though, a lot of them had already been fired or left the job or whatever, we continued to, participate in these political kind of like movements together, because it just, even if it wasn't them, it was for the people that come after them. It was for the patrons who are, spending money in this place. It's like, we need you to know that this is what's going on here. And if you don't really want to support this, then there's another kava bar a few blocks down the street. You should go that way. And they treat their employees better. So we did that. I think it lasted like 2 years of doing that, even though we had already like migrated into different spaces that also served kava. But after that 2-year fight, eventually the place, got closed down. And for us, that was the win that we wanted. Like, we knew they weren't getting their jobs back or anything, but we didn't, like, that was just like a stain in our community to have these unethical people exploiting and mistreating, our community members, people who formed extremely important bonds, and even maybe like grew in ways that they didn't know. A lot of people who go to kava shops and things are in recovery from other substances and stuff too. So like that was really a really important space, and we did not want that space to exist. And yes, thank you. Oh, that's a lot of time. Doing better than I thought. So yeah, so like that's kind of like an example number 2. Like we can have, it doesn't have to be a party, it doesn't have to be a ceremony, it doesn't have to be like this super structured thing. It could also just be a space in which we relax and chat and do other things. Like sometimes we had like trivia nights at these kava spaces. We had, poetry, live bands, whatever. It was just like a community space. We enjoyed the kava, we enjoyed the kratom, and things like that. And it was very healing for us. Many of us are still, doing things together to this day. And I just like, those are just 2 examples that I was thinking of in my personal life. There are a lot of other things that, people can engage in as well that I do here and there. And I think that people can like even just go and with their friends or whatever, start to think like, how can we think outside the box, and like how are we using these different substances, or maybe no substances if that's your thing. But like, I think that these tend to unlock a lot of potential in us that may be kind of challenging to tap into when you're having to deal with all of the other hustle and bustle of life. You know, kava is a GABAergic drug, like the same class of drug. It was like Xanax and alcohol, but it has like none of those kind of like side effects of alcohol and things like that that kind of help, you know, bring you into a relaxed state. You can be more sociable. You know, maybe if you have anxiety, it kind of helps ease your anxiety around like being around people or whatever. You know, I've done things like letter writing, prison letter writings, like people who are in jail, like, you know, people who need support, who might be like political prisoners and things like that, getting together, doing things like that to support other community members. You know, like I said, that we do a lot of fundraisers and mutual aid, like leveraging like hosting raves or parties or whatever, things that people will like go out and support because it's fun, but also then like having that other cause attached to it, where now those funds are supporting something that is, you know, basically going back into the community. And like, for example, like I said, my birthday is coming up in a little under 2 weeks here, and while I am throwing a big birthday celebration for myself, any of the funds raised are actually going to go towards this annual firearms training that I do with queer and trans people every year for the last 4 years, because there's been like a increased interest in that. And I think there are a lot of people and a lot of organizations that do, you know, like other self-defense trainings in New York specifically, where, you know, you can learn martial arts and stuff like that. So I was like, well, I want to fill this other gap of like for people who actually want to understand and learn more about firearms, even if they have no intention of owning one or can't own one for legal reasons, but they get a chance to still be exposed to them, learn how to use them. Everything gets paid for them, because actually going to a firearms range is very expensive if you've never been to one. You have to pay for the rentals of the, you know, the guns, and you have to rent the lanes, and all the boxes of ammunition cost money. And we travel outside of New York City into not too far away city in New Jersey, because it's a much more diverse firearms range where they'll acknowledge people's pronouns and chosen names, and there's a lot more people that look like us there. You know, in New York City, there tends to be a lot of NYPD and folks that will make us feel very uncomfortable and unwelcome if we went to a firearms range there. Yeah, I want to talk about two particular people that were in my life, and well, one of them is still in my life, fortunately, where we really do, like, it just kind of like underscores where we really do need to be able to support each other and, you know, just be there for each other in whatever way that we can. I actually had a friend that was based here, and there were, you know, a queer, trans, BIPOC individual who was actually a heroin user, and they, you know, there's a lot of stigma around stuff like that. I don't personally care if those are the types of substances that you're using. Like I said, I come from a harm reduction background, and someone yesterday was talking about coming from the generation of ACT UP and whatnot, and those people didn't care. They're just going to give you the clean needles and whatnot, and that's like the same philosophy that I follow, you know. And if that substance for them is kind of like just helping them get through the day, like day to day, it's keeping them alive basically, because it's giving them whatever they need at that time. I just support whatever they're going through and allow them to, if at any point they feel like they need to change their relationship to the substance, support that too, but I don't, you know, urge them or, you know, shame them or do anything like that. So they were, you know, they felt comfortable enough to disclose that to me, because I'm very open about my drug use. You know, as some of you may know, I'm very open about my drug use online and very publicly, so people tend to talk to me about a lot of those things. And, but they also started to talk to me about, like, you know, I feel like I'm kind of really hitting a wall here, and I would love to explore psychedelics. can you help connect me to some resources? And I was like, yeah, of course, that's not a problem. Like, I know some people out on the West Coast. Let me see if I can get you in touch with some of these people, here. I'm in New York City. It's not a whole lot that I can personally do. But I wanted to get them in touch with folks out here that could help them, take that step, maybe, go through that journey and see if that was going to work for them in whatever they were going through, which they didn't fully disclose to me. Like, I kind of started to glean some information from how they would share things with me, some things that they would post online. I kind of got the sense that they were, they had lost somebody that they were very, very close to, and felt very alone, felt very, very isolated. And they clearly did not have a relationship with their family. So, they were just looking for some sort of connection. And I was like, also, when I heal up from surgery, I'll come out to San Francisco and I'll take you on a date, because they said they wanted a date. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's no problem. I love treating people. People deserve nice things, especially, when you do so much for your community and might not be feeling sort of that, love and nurture that you put out there returned to you. And it was actually very difficult when I was, gathering myself to come out here, because it was pretty much a year ago from this week that they ended up ending their life, because they had already kind of been, I guess they were already kind of pushed to that edge, and there just wasn't anything that had been initiated fast enough for them to feel like they could keep going on. And I was struggling. I was I'm going to be here, and they're not going to be here. And this happens in my life a lot, because this is just kind of the state in which a lot of queer and trans folks, this is just kind of state a lot of queer and trans folks are in, especially if you have any additional marginalizations. They were a sex worker. They, used heavily stigmatized drugs. And they, were a person of color. So there was a lot going on for them. And, even though they had kind of already done that, it was unfortunate that we had actually done a panel talk, not too far ahead from when that happened. And on that panel talk, if any of you all are familiar with Juliana Mulligan, she had reached out to me hey, I'm going to have you on this panel with Dr. Carl Hart, and we would like to have somebody who's an opioid user on this panel. And I was I know the perfect person, because they also want to meet Dr. Carl Hart. That's basically their hero. This will be perfect. This will be great. And then when I had received that news, they were we want to do something for this person. And their name is Sive Sanchez. I don't know if anybody here knows them. But they, we got together. We were we want to do something to commemorate the memory of Sive. And they only met them that one time through working through the panel. We had already made that bond when we were working together. And I really want us to be able to be making these connections frequently, all the time, in everything that we're doing, because there's always somebody who just kind of needs that needs that in their lives, even if they're not always projecting that. And it's very difficult to make those connections if we're doing things that are stigmatizing them and making them feel like they're isolated. And like I say, you can't get your mental right if your material is not right. You have to have your material needs met so you can have your mental health needs met. And even if the psychedelics wasn't going to cure them or anything, it still would have just been that support system that they would have had that could have eventually got them there. But unfortunately, that just came too late for them. Oh no, can I just, one quick thing, just 5 minutes. Can I Can I get 5 minutes in? Okay, thank you. One more story, because I don't want to end on that. That was so sad. This one's good. So I have another friend, and this actually just came up last night, and I like really want to talk about it. So I have this other friend, also queer, and has been dealing with a lot of issues with their drug use and housing and all this stuff. I had met them when when they were living in New York, and we had bonded through like the skating community because I skate and everything. And they ended up having to move back out here to San Francisco, where they're from. And like it's just kind of been like, it's just been tumultuous for her in that time. And she calls me a lot. She's like, can you help me? Can you help me? And I was like, there's only so much I can do. I'm on the East Coast, but I'll do what I can. And so like when I got out here, I texted her like, hey, I don't know if you're still in San Francisco, but like I'm here. I'll come see you wherever you are. Hoping that they're still here, both like physically and like in life, because I hadn't heard from them recently, and the last I had heard from them, they were unhoused again. And I ended up getting a text message that I saw this morning from them saying, basically, hey, I'm in a residential treatment center for women and children, and unfortunately, I'm still in blackout for another 20 days. They give me some extra details. They send me a picture of the coursework in their curriculum. I've only been here a week. It's a 6-month program, but I'm already learning so much. The director is a black queer woman and wants me to do the counselor training after I graduate and work here, and I'm going to do it. I love you so much, Hawk. You've helped me emotionally so much. You have no idea. I wouldn't be here or alive without you. So yeah. So I'm going to go try to see her, I guess, tomorrow before I leave. But I'm just glad that she's still here. And I wanted to end on a happier note. A lot of what I do is illegal. But I'm gonna do what I have to do. I'm gonna do what I have to do to protect, my community. Not that I'm saying anyone should do anything illegal. I mean, we're kind of already doing illegal stuff. Like, let's be honest, we're all here talking about drugs and doing drugs. But, there is a such thing as civil disobedience, and that's gotten us a lot of places so far. I love New York. I think New York is the greatest. But 10 years before Stonewall, there was the Cooper's Donuts riots in LA, and 3 years before Stonewall, there was the Compton's cafeteria here in San Francisco. So, fucking use your power, and if that means throwing some rocks or whatever the fuck you gotta do, fucking do it, because we're here, and I don't know, be gay, do crime.